Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special study session on today, September 24th. It is 5:02. Can we please have roll call?
Trustee Hodges.
Present.
Trustee Flores is absent. Trustee Young. Trustee Amboy.
Present.
And President Fox.
Present.
Trustee Jacobo. Trustee De Leon. And Trustee Arbab. And we have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is behind the Promethean. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to adopt our agenda? Vice President Amboy,
I make a motion to adopt today's agenda.
do I hear a second?
Second.
It's tied to me.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Trustee Hodges.
Aye.
Trustee Flores is absent. Trustee Young. Vice President Amboy.
Aye.
And President Fox.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobo. Trustee De Leon. Trustee Arbab. And the motion passes 4 yes with 1 absent.
Thank you. At this time, we're now down to information and study. 2A, presentations and initial EIA, equity impact analysis. This will be covering our pillars 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Use the mic. So before we jump in, I just want to kind of set the stage for this evening. So tonight marks an important step in a process that is both necessary and deeply difficult. We are here to review the draft equity impact analysis for Phase 2 of school closures and consolidations. This study session is designed to give the board the opportunity to ask clarifying questions, to understand the data presented in the EIA, and to begin weighing my preliminary recommendations for school closures and the relocation of John Finney Education Complex. And I will, when I'm done with this, will review the recommendations we made at the last meeting. I want to acknowledge, first and foremost, how emotional and challenging this work is. School closures impact students, families, staff, and entire neighborhoods. None of us entered this profession to close schools, but as stewards of this district, we have an obligation to make decisions that ensure the long-term stability of Vallejo City Unified. The reality is that we are continuing to deficit spend. Our unrestricted funding, which is primarily dedicated to salaries, benefits, and staffing, is structurally imbalanced. If we do not act, this deficit will deepen and will further threaten our ability to maintain programs and services for students. That is why we must move forward with difficult but responsible decisions to reduce expenditures and right-size our district. This study session is not a decision point. Rather, it is an opportunity to ask questions, seek clarity, and ensure that as a board, you have the data, analysis, and legal guidance needed to reach an informed decision by December 17th. You will hear tonight from our partner consultants, Keith Weaver and Robert Schimmel, who will walk us through the equity impact analysis, and from our legal counsel, Leslie Locker, tongue-tied, who will answer any questions about the process and requirements. We will track your questions carefully. Some will be answered tonight, others may require additional research, and we will return at subsequent study sessions. And looking ahead at the next study session, we will also bring forward preliminary recommendations for staffing and budget reductions that align with this work. I want to thank you for engaging with this process with the seriousness and care it requires. The decisions ahead are among the most difficult a board can face, but they are also among the most important. Together, we have the responsibility to ensure Vallejo's schools are fiscally stable, equitable, and able to deliver high-quality education our students deserve. So I do want to just quickly walk us through the preliminary recommendation that was made last week. Just as a reminder, we have 7 schools that we analyzed, and myself with staff, these were the recommendations that we're putting forward to the board to anchor the discussions, but also know that there are many options within the 7. So the recommendation was that we would close Lincoln Elementary, And I included in this just some analysis of some high-level data points. The estimated cost per student, for example, and if we do close a Lincoln, potentially where those students would go next. Also, current enrollment, and this data is as of yesterday when I pulled the data. And the last one, which is adult-to-student ratio, is all employees, not just teachers, all employees on that campus. The ratio is 6.3 to 1. And I did that comparison just so we could have a frame. Cooper Elementary is another recommendation for closure. A difference in estimated cost per student. So I think it's, if I go back for a quick second. So at Lincoln, we're spending roughly 15.6. And estimated per student cost is 5.9 or 5,900. There's been some significant staffing turnover over the past few years at that school. Enrollment's currently at 363. The adult to student ratio is about 13.2. Same analysis, number of employees per students. One thing I did want to note, if we do close Cooper, we would be not just looking at moving all students to Highland, but we really would be triggering an attendance boundary review, because I think if we go down the path of closing 3 more schools this year after having just closed 2 schools, we probably need to take the opportunity to redraw boundaries across our district. The third recommendation is for Pennycook Elementary. You can see the estimated cost per pupil. There is a proximity to Stephen Manor. Enrollment as of yesterday, 395. The adult to student ratio is 14.1 to 1. Going a little further, we would recommend the majority of the students going to Stephen Manor. However, we would redraw boundaries. Some families that are currently slotted for Pennycook would potentially go to Glen Cove or Wardlaw. Lastly, the John Finney Education Complex. You can see the cost per pupil. We would recommend a relocation of all 5 of the programs, moving together to the then vacated Cooper Elementary campus if we close Cooper. We think there's an opportunity for that current John Finney complex to potentially sell, maybe look into workforce housing, or even if things really start to change, we've heard a lot of requests for a future middle school. John Finney Education Complex was formerly Vallejo Middle School, and that could be a home of a future middle school in the out years. We also are looking at the proximity to medical partners for future programming. John Finney, if they move to Cooper, we're really centrally located next to Kaiser and Summit. And then we also know because the hospitals are there, there is access to public transit to that school, which for high school kids, that's really important to have those avenues to get to campus. So that's just a reminder of the recommendations we made, the staff made to the board. And at this point, I would turn it over to our partners to walk us through the EIA. And I'm thinking as a process, I will have some key stopping points to give the board opportunity to ask questions, clarify. Yeah.
It takes a moment
You
to
gotta
lay.
hold it down. Do you want me to put the presentation up or the report?
Do you think it's worth going through the whole slideshow, or should we just kind of maybe
I'm gonna
stick to
get-
some summary
Gauge to
information?
how do you all feel about? You saw the presentation last week.
Is the same one?
It's the same presentation.
Yeah, nothing's changed. I think it's really an opportunity for, maybe I could highlight some of the summary information, but it's really an opportunity, I think, at this point, having heard the presentation last week. If you have questions, comments, we'd like to hear your input and feedback, any concerns you may
Just
have.
summarize, or just quickly summarize or recap it real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. And then maybe we could just jump to page 9 is kind of our summary findings. And so as pointed out, we looked at 7 schools, the 7 schools for closure. We looked at a variety of receiving schools for the students who may attend these schools that were closed. So in total, we looked at 16 different options And all 16 are listed here. And then what we did is we identified potential impacts from an equity standpoint based on metrics the board previously adopted for our guidance. And so you can see in the summary table here, we've highlighted which metrics, if any, we think may be impacted. And then we've color-coded them into whether we think in white there's going to be no impact or negligible impact. In green, if there's going to be a low impact. In yellow is a medium impact, and then in red is a high impact. And so if looking at the options here, Stephen Manor at the top, we don't think closing that school would have any impacts or would have negligible impacts. With respect to the Finney Education Complex, we do see some impacts related to the fact that this complex houses special programs and houses some important demographics of students, but we anticipate the impacts being relatively low. With respect to Lincoln, there are a variety of impacts, including the operating cost, the environmental impacts, demographics, aesthetics, and transportation. But given how few students are enrolled in that school, we again think that the impacts would be relatively low. Then we get down to Pennycook to Stephen Manor. We see a transportation impact there that's relatively modest. There's a few other schools on this list, Highland, for example, where we see some, and Cooper, where we see some modest impacts, particularly with respect to transportation. And then further down the list, we see closing Federal Terrace. We see closing Federal Terrace being high impacts, as well as Highland to Cooper being a high impact. So we think those campuses in particular, Federal Terrace and Highland, we see some real challenges and difficulties in the closure of those schools.
Can you recap why again?
Yeah, so in particular, transportation is a key impact. With respect to Federal Terrace to Lincoln with the lower grades and Federal Terrace to either Cooper or Highland for the upper grades, we see a burden on the transportation, particularly the number of students who may be requiring transportation services, as well as the fact that we're splitting grade levels to two different campuses, right? That's two routes effectively for those students. And Highland to Cooper, we see particular challenges because the capacity of the Cooper site and special programs, particularly with respect to special education students, those classrooms tend to be relatively low teacher to student ratios, and we don't see enough capacity to see Cooper accommodating all of the students from Highland. So that's a particular concern. Not that it's insurmountable, but it would be challenging to try to accommodate all of those students at Cooper. So for those reasons, we see some real challenges with those sites. If we scroll up a little bit, I just want to point out the 7-Eleven committee's recommendation as well. And there is a nice alignment here in terms of the recommendations. You can see at the top of the 7-Eleven committee's ranking, we have Lincoln, John Finney, Pennycook, Stephen, and Cooper. And that is how the equity impact analysis effectively has the same grouping of schools in the top 5 as well. So there is a nice alignment of outcomes here. Obviously, we were looking at these specific equity metrics. The 7-Eleven committee had their own considerations and priorities involved in their decision-making process. But the outcome, I think, is very similar in that we're seeing essentially the same grouping of schools rise to the top of both lists. So maybe I'll pause there and see if there's questions or concerns or input.
I wanted to ask for the, if it can be reversed as well. So instead, like say you want to do, if you did Federal Terrace to Lincoln, if you close Federal Terrace, go to Lincoln, would that be the reverse or no? That wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, so Lincoln to Federal Terrace, I think, is the reverse, right? So that is listed on our number 5B on our list.
So it's all green, okay.
It is all green. We don't see as really any challenges with that. There are a number of impacts. The operating cost impact is related to the fact that a lot of these students, for example, qualify for programs like free and reduced lunch, which is a boost to funding. The environmental impact relates to transportation. The demographics of this campus are relatively concentrated. The aesthetics relate to the fact that this is kind of in the downtown, the school's located in the downtown area in kind of a commercial district.
That's why I'm asking, because
Yep.
to close our only site that's in the downtown area, that's why I'm asking to make sure that we look at location and that to not alienate ourselves if just to have a downtown place. So that's why I'm asking. So thank you, I'm glad that's there and it's all green. That was my question.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee De Leon?
I have two questions. The first one, looking at the Finney Education Complex to Vallejo High and Bethel, you didn't, I don't know if that counts as, that's environmental? Bringing the kids back to, that's not environmental, is it?
So one thing, when this analysis was done for Finney Education Complex, they were looking at an analysis of if we took the 5 programs and essentially closed Finney and moved those onto those campuses. So that's the analysis. The analysis isn't about moving it completely to Cooper. I just want to clarify that.
Well, yeah, I don't, cause like I have the question, but I don't know in what okay. Having the kids go from Finney back to their home schools, I think, cause I don't know where it would be on that, but the impact as far as, our, not bullying, like the, not crime, what is, like if they're fighting and stuff, like if there's a possibility that it might go back up, cause a lot of us are at Finney and those schools for a reason, so bringing them back to their home schools. But I don't know if it was, because it's not environmental, but I think it would impact the schools personally. I just don't know where it would be put on there. That was the question, because I was, well, like, I don't know how to ask that question.
No, I mean, it's a good point. You know, if we were considering taking Finney and putting them back onto either Vallejo, like a school within a school model,
Yeah.
or at Bethel, that is a consideration, right? So students end up going to John Finney because they've had some struggles at their home school. Some of it's social-emotional, culture, climate. It could be bullying. It could be a variety of things.
Yeah.
Why a student would go from one campus to another, and putting them back in the same environment might not be good.
Yeah.
Right.
I just didn't know where it would go on there, but I thought that would be an impact of some sort. And then the other one I was looking at is I don't know how big the school actually is. I mean, I've been on Stephen Manor's campus, but so from Pennycook kids to go to Stephen Manor, you don't think there would be a capacity impact? Because that's a lot of kids. Those are big schools.
Yeah, and so Stephen Manor is a large school. Pennycook is relatively smaller.
So it was just debating like between the two, which one was bigger?
There was
Or-
a sort of a debate about would it make sense for Stephen Manor kids to go to Pennycook?
To go, yeah, so.
Or vice versa.
Okay,
Pennycook
okay,
to Stephen Manor.
okay.
One of the considerations that, at least for me, in saying Pennycook to Stephen, is the fact that the Stephen Manor campus, one, has a newer facility, so the facility is in better shape. But second is, if we're combining 2 schools or consolidating 2 schools, you're gonna have
Yeah.
more students on a campus, and Stephen Manor's multi-purpose room where kids eat is significantly larger
Yeah.
than Pennycook. Pennycook doesn't fit the kids they have now
Yeah.
in their lunchroom. So imagine maybe double that size.
Okay.
So considering that, the big question that comes up for Stephen Manor is, where do people park,
Yeah.
right? And so theoretically, we'll say, it's much easier to build a parking lot than it is to build a new multi-purpose room.
Multi-purpose room.
And, right, and we can always throw up the map and show visuals.
Yeah.
for the board.
Well, because I was just thinking, because I remember one of the first meetings we had about the closures and consolidations, one of them, we got like, a basically chart of like how many, kids each school holds, and approximately saying how many, that's like putting like 900 kids at one school. So I was like, is it not a capacity impact? That's what I was like, but, so it was either, so when we had the chart that was just up, it was, would it make more sense to move Stephen Manor to Pennycook or Pennycook to Stephen Manor? That's what that chart was.
Yes, and I think it was I think it was 395 kids that were being moved from Pennycook to go to Stephen.
And then some would be moved to Glen Cove and.
Some would go to Glen Cove. and I
Wardlaw?
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe, I don't remember Highland too, maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Also understanding that.
Oh, redoing the boundaries. So the boundaries are be done as well, so it might not be exactly the same original number of kids, because when the boundaries are redone, people in neighborhoods would be shifted so that it could be more equitable with numbers that way too.
That was another question I had. What are it's attendance boundaries? What is
School
that?
boundaries. But yeah, those will have to be redone.
But like, but what is it?
Currently?
No, like what, like it, in general, like what is a school boundary? What is that? Like the,
The area where you live
uh-huh,
is where your kid would go to school.
okay. So okay.
And those are lines that are drawn to, I can project. Well, okay.
So we have to
But it's-
Yeah.
If you live on that side of the
For the
freeway,
recording.
you go to those type of schools, but if you live on this side of the freeway, you usually.
Yeah,
go to
because I
those
know,
schools.
I live right next to Hogan, but the way that my cutoff is, it's literally on my street, and it's the houses to the left side of my street are Stephen Manor, and to the right side of my street are Pennycook. Oh, okay, I get it now. Thank you.
So we're looking at a map on Google Earth. We have Pennycook here, Hogan, Stephen. So let me zoom into Pennycook first, so I can kind of paint the visual of the multi-purpose room. And I know many of you know exactly what it looks like. You've been in the buildings themselves. So this little square here is the multi-purpose room. Currently, for this campus, the majority of the kids are actually eating under this shade covering. That's an outdoor space.
Okay, this is something that's been visited once before. There was when Stephen Manor caught on fire. Stephen Manor was put on Pennycook's campus, right there. And they didn't have a problem at all at that time. So I don't see what the problem is with putting Stephen Manor back on that campus with the access roads running around it. We have a major traffic situation. Even if you build a parking lot, you still have a major situation there of traffic. Whereas you have feeder streets all the way around Pennycook. You have that field that accommodated 2 schools once before, and they did a great job of it, and it wasn't a problem.
Do you recall when that was done, were there additional portables brought onto that campus, or was it the existing footprint?
So I was both a parent of a Pennycook student and subbed at the time at both of those schools. They were not a combined school. They ran as 2 separate schools. And it would require, if we did the same thing, it would require basically the elimination of that field space. And it would we'd have to bring in lots of portables in buildings. They did not share common spaces. They did not share the multipurpose
It
room.
doesn't matter.
I'm
I
just,
understand what you're saying. No, they did not share common spaces, but they could have. They could have, if they put portables up there and they were in the same space at the same time, they could have shared the same space.
so they shared the same campus, but they ran as 2 separate schools.
But that can also be altered too. I'm not finished. Sorry. We don't have our little signs
I think trustee De Leon's been waiting. I meant trustee Jacobo.
Did you acknowledge her or me first?
She's been waiting. Is it okay? And then trustee Hodges.
All right, good evening, everybody. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. Just a kind of a quick suggestion. Since we talked about issues with kids fitting in the NPR room, with fitting in the NPR room, I was kind of thinking if maybe we kind of, I want to say maybe like split the schedule in half a little bit, where maybe the younger kids go 10 minutes before the older kids or the more older kids, and then from there kind of like, I don't know if there's certain laws that protect that or if that's already going on, but maybe kind of, it's already going on.
So
You're on the right
having-
track, but those
you-
things.
You are. So I'll speak to, I was the principal at Dan Mini, similar size multipurpose room. We, in order to use the multipurpose room on a rainy day, we had to pack it tight with children sitting like
Close.
very close, and we still had to run 4 lunches to do that. So we had lunches pretty much from starting at
Back to back.
11 all the way till about 1:30 to get everybody eating. And children are required to have 20 minutes time to eat, which means they've got to cycle in, have 20 minutes to eat, cycle out, clean up for the new group to come. It is, right now at Penny Cook on a rainy day, because of the size of the multi, they eat in their classrooms instead of in the multi. It's far too small
Okay.
to run
And rotate.
large groups,
Okay.
right? Even to break it down, because that's what we do anyway.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Hodges.
Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, but another issue that we have to consider is at Stephen Manor, the structure, because of the fire, it's upgraded. There's, better plumbing, electricity. The whole facility itself is in better shape than it is.
It is, of the two campuses, it's the better facility, both for the multipurpose room, but also classroom spaces and the newness of that campus. So up on the map is Stephen Manor. That whole dry field that you see in the image, that's what we would consider potentially laying, even if, so currently, you can correct me, Heather, if this is wrong, but I believe they only use up to this tree line. So this tree line, that way is playground. They don't let kids even go past the tree line. So,
Correct, because they can't supervise that far back. It's too deep.
so this whole back area could be, a path, a driveway down and paved into a parking lot.
Could,
I don't know.
question to that, can there be egress or access? Do you see where yes, to that road back there?
We're looking into that. I don't know if Ruben, if you have any information.
What road is that?
Is that an easement?
Can I answer? Because I live over there. It's basically all that's over there is it's nothing there aside from a fence that I want to say has something like California or USA related on it. But ultimately, there's nothing behind that fence. They haven't touched it or done anything with it. I think it's just there to be there. Oh, that I have no clue.
Because if that was access to the staff parking lot, that would be a nice access point that would eliminate traffic and congestion. Trustee Hodges, are you? Dr. Young?
There's one way in and one way out, the way that's structured right now. That property line where you see the fence, that's either city property or that's someone else's property. So we would have to purchase that property in order to get accessibility to go out to that street. So you have a congestion. You have one way in and one way out. there.
But it seems like it still would be cheaper if an opportunity to, if that, I mean, we don't even know what that property is, but if we can gain access to it, it's still cheaper than building a building, I would think.
We don't have excess money to be shopping around
Yeah,
to
currently
buy
that-
property.
that
We're
strip
not
of-
trying to sell it. We'll sell property, but we don't have time to be buying property. That's my own opinion. While I got the mic, I'll,
Yeah, that's a gate. It's a fence that opens and it goes to the school. That's what I was gonna say.
Someone moved it. So there's two access points. So there's a frontage road in front of the school, and then behind on the side, so there's two ways.
There's actually three. Well, so if you were to use, there's one to the right of the school, to the far side. Yeah, there's one over there too, which is initially already a smaller parking lot, but if you go behind, yeah, right there, that whole thing is open.
So that, where those portables are, I believe was a parking lot at some point, but portables were added to that space.
Yeah, but they still park, like, even the way the cars are right here, they still park all the way around that for the portables right there. So initially, if that, I think that's a basketball court, but I think it's just, I don't know if they actually have the poles or anything, but initially that whole thing goes all the way through.
So we have been looking at parking at all of the affected sites, especially the ones on the 7-Eleven list. Not only from a ingress perspective, a fire life safety perspective, but also a budget perspective to see how much these would cost. So we're looking at that. The property or the strip of property in the back that you're referring to is, according to the Solano County GIS, it's Solano County property, that piece of land. So we would have to work with them to develop some type of easement to make that happen, so.
But that side area on the front, the side area, so there's two, so it's not, so there's two different streets, at least there's access. If there was a way to make better access on the side road for congestion, because if you're adding that many more students, drop-off and pickup is gonna be, it's already very difficult there for drop-off and pickup. I've been there during those times. But to add so many more students, it's gonna be even a lot more congestion. But if you're able to get to that point on the side, maybe the staff, and there's a way to somehow maybe go around the back so it's gated to get to that other side. No, on the pavement, yeah. To do like a fence or something to get to the, I think at least the congestion for staff to get in and out. There's two ways of egress, not just relying on that frontage road. So if we already have those two and we can make it work for double the staff, because again, drop-off and pickup is going to be a lot worse because of the numbers are being increased.
What's the possibility of those portables? Could they be moved in that area where the portables are now? Be a circular type of drop-off and pickup? So if you move the portables back to where the playground is and turn that into a circular lot where you can drop off and pick up?
I think it'd be expensive.
All of these ideas we should be taking note of, because obviously we're not going to have those answers this evening. But we should be researching if we were to make Stephan Manor work in a larger capacity, we need to make sure that you have the information necessary if that's the decision we make. So we need to come back with what's possible when it comes to parking, what's possible when it comes to drop-offs. Similarly, if we were to go in the other direction with Pennycook, we need to be able to articulate what we're going to do to house a larger school there to deal with the fact that the multipurpose room really isn't built for that capacity. And we can cost those things out. The likelihood that we're able to build a multipurpose room or get a double-wide portable multipurpose room, those things all have costs associated with them. Same with the parking structures. So those are all things that the board will have to consider when we bring that information forward.
Yeah.
wanted to say also, working at a site, an elementary site daily, drop-off and pickup are very, very stressful. It's one of the most stressful times when you have, my site we have over 650 kids. But if you add to here, what would approximately be the number be with the combination? About 700, it depends on the new boundary, so 600 to 700 approximately. Okay, so it's still, that's a lot for the little street. So Pennycook does have better, at least drop-off and pickup opportunity. But then the other stressful time at every school is the lunch and breakfast. So if you don't have enough room, especially rainy days in the winter, kids are stuck inside. So there's a lot of factors here. And yes, there's lots of upgrades at Stephen. But it'd be a lot of, anyways, there's just so many pros and cons to look at here. Vice President Amboy, I think you were, and then.
For Dr. Young. Oh, the microphone. Personally, just a personal opinion, I think it would be easier to even discuss talking to the city about how much it would be to buy that one little lot thing. Wait, over over trying to add a lot more that would needed to be added to house all the kids at Pennycook. Even if we're, because, okay, I listen sometimes. Wait, hear me out. Hear me out. At the board meetings, you're always talking about how, where are we going to get the money from? We don't have this money to spend. Okay, but because Stephen Manor is newer and bigger, you're spending less money on the things that you need to figure out, what is it, drop off and pick up at that school, then you would need to actually house all the kids at the school. We can't even figure out how we would, I mean, we're gonna have to, but if it worse comes to worse, but it would be way more difficult and probably a lot more money to try and figure out how to house all the kids at Pennycook than trying to figure out how we would get them picked up and dropped off. Just saying. I'm just saying.
And then Baroque. Oh, did you want to reply?
Thank you for being very observant on, we don't have no money. If you didn't get nothing else out of that board meeting, I told you, we don't have no money.
You
But
say it all the time.
I acknowledge what you're saying, and thank you for that contribution.
You're welcome.
Pass the baton around.
There's enough capacity.
I think no matter what capacity we decide, as a board, we decide to close.
But I think the concern is about.
And just from my experience, would it be possible that if we could actually provide transportation for all of the students, so the parents doesn't have to come on campus, in that one sense? I mean, schools across America have been busing kids for years. If we eliminate the cause of parents all rushing to the school site, can we allocate some money for more transportation, more buses, so we can take care of the kids, getting to school, coming back, versus trying to figure out something so difficult in that one sense? I just think it would be, if we just had, I know some federal funding is out there for transportation. And it's always difficult to get more bus drivers and, buses themselves. However, with our puzzle, I think no matter what schools we decide to close, I just think we need to amp up on transportation and to say, hey, this is new for us. All kids must take the bus to school.
And one of the things we've been working on is investing in the infrastructure at our transportation department, our transportation yard. And we'll bring back something to the next board meeting to share some of the work we've done on our maintenance equipment there, our storage equipment, and ultimately, some of the more long-term goals we have are to secure some of the federal funding around electric vehicles,
Right.
electric buses, storage and generation of that energy. So it's something that we're prepping for so that we can be nimble with supporting whatever consolidation or challenge we may have with transportation to bring our students to school. It's not just related to the consolidations, but bringing more kids to school,
Right.
looking at our routes again, looking at our training for our drivers and making sure we have the right equipment to service the kids, so.
Trustee Arbob is next, but I wanted to reply that also, if we don't have money, and if the purpose of closing schools is to save money, if we are going to then acquire more money with a lot more transportation, what's the purpose of closing the school then? So if we're not looking at all the benefits or we're going to accrue more cost, then why are we doing this? So I think we need to look in the whole picture, the plus and the minus, and what are we taking off the plate for money, but we're adding something new to the plate. So is it really, why are we even looking at the plate then?
So I think there's an important distinction between capital dollars and general operating dollars. And so while we have some serious budget challenges with our general fund, which funds staffing, other operating costs, we do have capital dollars that we can invest that we can't use on salaries and benefits and people and services and programs. So those dollars we do have. We have more of those dollars than we do on the general fund side. So those dollars can be invested into our schools, into a parking lot, for example, into
Capital improvements.
temporary structures, capital improvements,
Got it.
including transportation enhancements.
Okay.
From an infrastructure perspective, so.
Trustee Arbob?
So just a suggestion and then a question. So the suggestion would be maybe we could poll some people that, because obviously Vallejo Charter School was moved on to Mare Island campus. So because I have two siblings that go there, and I heard from my parents that there was a lot of traffic issues. So maybe we could ask them how it was there, right? Because this is obviously not the exact same, but it's a similar concept of combining the populaces of two schools onto one campus, right? So we could maybe poll parents, poll families on how it worked for them, and maybe if it's not as big of an issue now, we could ask them what they did to improve it. Also, this is just something more vague, in general. Where are we seeing the benefits of these school closures, these school consolidations? Like I think Mr. Fernandez said that. Where are we seeing? Oh, the money we might have saved. Where can we find those statistics? Could a report be made on that? Because I think that'd be really important for us to see the results of what we're doing here.
Yeah, in the report, or I'm trying to remember, there is an analysis of what the savings yield with the school closure. Each school has a different savings amount, and it's between 300,000 a year to maybe 900, 600, somewhere around there. And those are ongoing savings. They repeat every year. The other factor for us is just, as a system, we need to right size. So the capacity of our district is built for a district of 20,000 plus students, and we're below 10,000. So that's not sustainable. We've talked about the use of the facilities we have. So as a school community, we've gotten used to, because we had this space, that everyone who shows up on a campus, for the most part, gets a classroom. That's their own. And every time a classroom space is used by an adult or a student, we have to clean that room. We have to make sure there's electricity in that room. And so when you multiply that across our district with the number of portables and spaces that are in use, there's very few spaces that we're not using currently. But when you use all those spaces, you're adding operational cost. So that's part of the right sizing, is we just can't continue to sustain those operational costs year over year for the population we serve.
Trustee DeLeon?
That was, on the paper that we got for the 3 schools, the estimated per student cost, is that how much, what is that?
I can talk to it. So the estimated per pupil cost is to educate the kids at that school. So that's your teacher, that's the office staff, that's the principal, that's all the component parts that are paid for. That's the additional interventions, intervention teachers, or if there's a teacher leader, all those component parts based on the population.
So that's how much we're spending now, or how much will we be
Now.
spending to move them? Okay,
Now.
okay.
So the point, especially with the Lincoln one, is that is our tiniest school. Currently 104 as of yesterday students attending that school. And it's one of our highest cost schools per pupil.
That's higher than my school.
Correct.
It maybe be a good opportunity to invite questions about Lincoln and talk about that particular site, if there's any concerns around that, or if that's more of a comfortable option for closure and consolidation.
What's the capacity of Lincoln if it was full?
I want to say 220.
Yeah, we currently have a capacity of about 250.
Okay, and then what's the capacity of Federal Terrace if it's full?
Approximately 780.
So the discussion, what we were talking about earlier is if we eliminate a school that's central downtown, if that would, how that would affect the city and the community, not having any location within the downtown area. So you're saying the max it can hold is 250. Anyways, so that was the
Correct.
concern earlier.
Correct. And I think the superintendent has discussed some ideas for how to potentially reuse that site that may include educational purposes. So that it wouldn't necessarily be the case that we would be selling that site. And I see a no. So I think the district is anticipating we would retain that site in that downtown location.
In the EIA, in the past, what historical significance does that site hold? Because in the past, it's been brought up that it's a historical site.
You mean like an official part of the, like, an historical registry? Is that the question?
It was brought up in years past
Yeah.
that it was historical to Vallejo.
Okay.
Yeah.
A landmark?
The Lincoln site, my understanding, is the oldest of our campuses, and it goes back to the 1800s, I believe.
Is it a landmark? Is it
I-
designated as a landmark?
Not certain if it has that designation.
It's not something that's.
EIA wouldn't say that.
I don't recall. Yeah, it wasn't one of the metrics we investigated was whether it had a landmark status.
Because I think within the last 7 years, when we've brought this up before, people have come to us and said, use that as an argument that it's your only downtown school, and it's also, I don't know if it's landmark, but it's historical.
Yeah.
So,
We did highlight the fact that it is in a downtown location in sort of an historical area. And we expressed particular interest in the reuse of that site because it is so centrally located. And I think that the superintendent has suggested some options for the reuse of that site that would keep it within the district's ownership.
Trustee De Leon, thank you. Trustee De Leon?
I just wanted to ask, because I know that Lincoln moved from K or TK?
TK to 5 to TK to 2.
Yeah, so, well, this year from TK to 2 to TK to 3, right? So is the district thinking about, like, I know because we were able to move up to 3rd grade this year, if it keeps going like good, is there any thoughts about moving it back up a grade and like keep going till it's TK through 5 again?
I want to answer, though, the reason that was done about 2 years ago, there was transitions with principals and behavior issues. The school needed to, and the past superintendent thought the way to combat that well, let's just make it a K2 school and we'll move the other ones to Highland. So that was how it was thought to solve that problem, was to make it a very small site that was more manageable. So, and make Highland, anyways, to move the kids apart.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was effective or not, but that was the philosophy with the old superintendent, why it was made into a K2. But it has the capacity of a full TK5.
But I also know that, not even speaking because about attendance or anything like that, but a lot of the kids that I know, when Lincoln closed from TK to 5, when it went to second, a lot of those kids, I don't know any of them that went to Highlands. All the ones I know went to charters. They went to Ali and Griffin or MIT or Caliber. So I think possibly it would help the district's attendance. If I know, because we're saying it was behavioral, but also thinking a lot of stuff I will say is done differently than it was. So do you, like you being superintendent now, do you think that's something you would work towards or like just, or think about?
So the whole cabinet team on Thursday of last week, we actually spent most of a day at Lincoln right after our board meeting, and visited every school, every classroom, every space. And there's some really great things happening at Lincoln. I'm not gonna stand here and say Lincoln is not doing what they need to do. They are. The energy there is positive. The principal in her second year has really helped turn that place around, and is really doing the work that's necessary. So, and the part of it for me, it's also separate of what we have to do here around closures. And you know, we stood there and answered a lot of questions of the teachers, and there's a lot of misunderstanding especially for teachers. When their school closes, does that mean they lose their jobs? Not necessarily, and so helping them understand the process. But what I took away from that visit with Lincoln, even after hearing that I'm recommended that Lincoln close, there was a sense of motivation and a sense of we're gonna make everything possible to have the best year ever for Lincoln and for the kids, and that's ultimately what we want for all our schools.
Yeah, because we talk about, or you said how it was behavior and everything, but I also understand that the behavior within the students, a lot of the times when it comes to elementary, comes from either environmental or it comes from what's going on within the school. So I feel like if the principal or staff or whoever has changed and stuff is going good there, that it could also benefit the kids and how they're doing inside. And I mean, because even I've said at one of the board meetings that like my school helped me change who I am, and it comes with the support and stuff like that, or it's your safe space. You feel comfortable going to school. If you like the school you're at, you feel comfortable at that school, I feel like it could positively benefit the kids for wanting. A lot of kids want to stay at their whole elementary through elementary, but that was just, this is way different, but just asking.
Trustee Jacobo was next.
Okay. I think something we also need to be kind of thinking about is safety. I live right by Lincoln, and when I first moved to Vallejo, my younger brother used to go to Lincoln, so we would walk from my house to Lincoln, and which is not really much of a walk, but I think there's a whole prostitution issue going on in Sonoma, and I feel like kids are curious. And I've noticed that every time I drive by Lincoln, it don't matter what time it is, what day it is, cold, doesn't matter, they're still out, right? And I know this is a school board. We can't really do anything about it, but just putting like a little black cover isn't really doing much because, like I said, kids are curious. And the kid is going to find a way. And I think it is really important for us to also take that into consideration, and also on behalf, like for the city, to also take that into their own hands, because it's not appropriate. It's just not right. And a kid shouldn't see that, right? And these, like we said, TK through second grade, these are babies. It's like, what are what is that going to project in their minds? It's going to end up being normalized. It's going to end up being common when it's not, or it shouldn't be. And it could cause a lot of mental issues, which, like I said, I think we need to talk about it before we decide to go on with more grades or go on with choosing where Lincoln stands. So, yeah, thank you.
And just so you know, the last few years with the 2x2, working with the city and with the police partnership, that is brought up multiple times. So they are aware, and they do have extra patrol there. And so this has been brought up many, many times, because again, you said it perfectly, it's out of our jurisdiction. It's out of our control. So we are protected with fencing and with what we do on our campus, but we have talked to the city, and they are making effort, and through the police as well. So that is, and tomorrow when three of you are there, I don't think it'll be brought up, but it is something that has been brought up many, many times. I don't know if it's Trustee Hodges or Trustee Flores who was next. They both were asking, so do you know who was first? Trustee Flores.
Thank you. I apologize for my tardiness, but traffic is traffic, I guess. Feel free to at any time. I'm kind of coming in the middle of the conversation, but just a couple thoughts. That neighborhood is having a lot of issues. It's traditionally, it's been a neighborhood that the symptoms of poverty have existed there a long time. And I've been in that neighborhood now 13, 14 years, in that specific neighborhood. My son's mom has been there. Her family's been there for like 45 years. So this is not a new problem that the students of Lincoln have had to face, and shame on our city. I'm going to say it, shame on our city for allowing it to just happen and just be the status quo and be the normal, and just, that's just Vallejo. So I think when it comes to what's going on outside of our doors, shame on our city. With that being said, when it comes to the school, one thing that I was really inspired with on one of the visits that I did at Lincoln was how it's fulfilling Pillar 4, a community-centered education, because there's more to schools than just the classrooms, right? And we talked about the safe space. This is a place that we've developed a community closet, a community pantry. Kids come for clothes, they come for undergarments, they come for food. If Lincoln's closed, where do these kids go to? So that's one of the things that I look at Lincoln needing to stay there as a school site, and either expanding it, making it a full elementary school again, or what. But the importance of the support systems that the current administration that's there and the prior administration that was there have put in place for the community. If the decision is made that Lincoln would be closed, that has to be utmost in whatever follows. That has to be there. That there's just, for myself, there's no what's the word I'm looking for? There's no I'm not budging on that. If there is nothing in place to protect the kids that are there that need it the most, then that's the hill I'm going to stand on. So I think as we're talking about what we're going to do with this site, whether to keep it open, whether or not, that has to be the priority of it.
Vice President Amway?
Hodges?
Oh, Trustee Hodges was next. Thank you.
Two questions. Why is the cost per student so much higher there? And if we fill that school up, would that make the cost per student go up or down?
I'll respond to that. Just by the nature of the staff to student ratios, because it's such a small student body, with, you know, staff in multiple roles, whether that be the reading specialist who's paid out of the LCRST grant, or the fact that they have an academic support provider full-time or a mental health support provider full-time. It's because it's a small school with low ratios of adults to students that the cost is higher. And so it's a ratio thing. And just a comment about adding the grades back. Having spent a lot of time on that campus, you know, that is an option to continue to add. But what I'm seeing is the benefit of this really small personal environment that is focused on literacy, and having children leave there as readers, and then maybe adding preschool, you know, as an option on that campus. I acknowledge what Trustee Jacobo said about the surrounding neighborhoods, but guess what? The kids come home to that neighborhood anyway. Mm-hmm. They're going to see what they're going to see. And, you know, taking something from that neighborhood is troubling. However, if we do need to, we need to honor that neighborhood in the best way that we can. As far as adding 4th and 5th grade back, I just acknowledge the small space of the playgrounds. There's no grass, no place to run. If I'm a 10-year-old boy who wants to run, there's nowhere to do that. So for the smaller children, it's a little feels a little bigger than if I'm 12, right? So that's just a couple of thoughts on that. But the cost is related to the ratio.
So would it go up or down if we added more students?
The cost per student would go down, probably not in the range of what other schools are, because it could never have the same capacity, right? It's a small place. But if it were functioning at closer to capacity, the cost per student would reduce.
In regards to Lincoln, from what I've seen, from where I stand, the program is exceptional. It's turned around in the last, what it was from 3 years ago to what it is today. You know, also to that benefit, the focus on community has been so well received, so positive. I think when we're thinking about consolidating, you know, if we decide to choose to take Lincoln to Federal Terrace or something like that, I still think we still have a great opportunity for Lincoln to be some kind of wellness center, in some capacity if we don't sell it right away. That way, the resources, the community wouldn't lose out on the resources that is available, that's going on still currently right now, because that is still important to the community, to all of us. We need to focus on, you know, what's best for VCUSD. And, you know, again, we not only do we serve our students, we serve our community. So, again, we just have to keep in mind that our decision is just not easy. No, in every angle that we look at it, it's not. And I hate that the fact that we're in this position to begin with a population as large as Vallejo. And we're just, we shouldn't even be here, in that case, but the reality is we are. So, again, I don't want the community to lose out on the resources, would love to have something that we do are still open to give back, you know, still community focused, and be positive, and because no matter what we do, it's going to impact everyone. So we just got to make sure everyone is listening and everyone is watching. So, although we shifted our families to other schools, we're still Vallejo. We're still going to help each other, and then we're going to do everything we can to make sure it's not as stressful. And that's why, you know, we're open. That's why we have our town halls. That's why we're doing these study sessions.
I think for Trustee Jacobo, you missed what Superintendent Tapacio said, that the students are going to see it regardless. If their school's open or not, they're still going to see whatever behaviors are in the neighborhood. So that's going to remain regardless if the school's open or not open, which was a good point. But I also want, like Trustee Flores said, this is one of our most vulnerable populations and most vulnerable areas within the downtown area. And I agree that certain aspects have to stay. But if we're looking to close a school, but we're saying, oh, well, we need to still keep running these programs, well, that's cost. So if our objective is to eliminate cost by doing school closures, then are we really eliminating the cost? And then we also have to look at, if we close the site completely, some of the school closures I've been through, just the security because of the vandalism and people trying to break in because they know it's empty, the fires, the vandalism, the unhoused, I think it was like $30,000 a month, if I remember correctly, for some of the sites, it was $30,000 a month. So then again, are you saving money? So if you're still going to run programs but no students, you're going to have high security, which is going to be very expensive. How are you right-sizing the district when you're spending more resources and there's no kids there? So I think we need to be very objective, and I want to keep coming back to that's our only downtown spot for a very vulnerable population, and for them to get transportation, even if you offer transportation, that's still difficult than having to build just walk to it being a neighborhood school. So I think that needs to be considered as well. So I just wanted to say that with, to add on. Trustee Flores?
One other thing to piggyback on your comments, President Fox, is that from what I see on the estimated savings from closure, the closure of Lincoln actually is the one that saves us the least. So I understand that it's the most per pupil cost, but that's the one that is 300,000 savings, and that's the lowest of them. So, as you were saying, we're keeping programs and it's being cost. I mean, why would we keep other schools that are costing double to keep open, or the savings is half as much by closing Lincoln and leaving Pennycook open, right? So you're talking about 300,000 to 600,000. So. Just kind of wanted, point that out.
I see Lincoln as being a diamond in the rough. Lincoln could possibly be a full-service community school, servicing that population in that area. It's a key place that we could put positive help in that area with the support of the surrounding partners down in that area. You have Fighting Back Partnership, you have several other people that are down in an area that are already connected to our school. So why not do a full-service community like you're doing at Springstown Elementary on this side of town, on that side of the bridge? So that would keep that site open.
When Mitch Romeo was here, I remember him telling me that when I think he was principal at that site at Lincoln, he said that it was, when we used to do it by score, it was it was a blue ribbon school, right there at Lincoln. It was that high achieving of a school, and he was so proud of, maybe some other people that, I just remember how proud he had that conversation with me about what it could be and what it was before, and it could be that again. So by you saying that, Dr. Young, reminded me of Mitch Romeo's conversation about what Lincoln School could be or was. So I just wanted to add that in. Can we look now, if there's no more discussion about Lincoln at the moment, can we look at Federal Terrace? Bring that site up, please. And then Cooper. Thank you.
The reason why that, I feel, the reason why that school was a high-performing school is because of the people that were in leadership. They believed in that community, they believed in delivery of instruction, and they believed in their teachers that delivered the instruction. So it has it has a lot to do with your leadership, how effective your program is going to be. And that's why at that particular time, we had some outstanding leaders, a principal, Diane Clark, rest in peace, was one of the leaders over there that did a fantastic job of putting that school where it was.
I think also, since we are part of VIBA, the Vallejo Business Alliance, having the restaurants in the downtown, not just restaurants, but all the businesses downtown, to support or maybe to donate or help with students, that's a high-profile thing, too, to help schools, as far as donations or just support of students. I've experienced that in the past, that some businesses will even adopt a school. So there's ways to get not just money, but resources, or they'll pay for programs. Like maybe your accelerated read program is $6,000, or they'll buy, who knows what the program is. So there's ways also from a downtown perspective for businesses to adopt or help. That's just another avenue for money. You're at Federal Terrace now. Okay, can you tell us about the numbers at this school, the capacity and the current numbers, please?
I don't have that slide. So
Yes,
let's-
so I can share that information. So the capacity of Federal Terrace is approximately 780 students. Correct. And the current enrollment, let me see if the latest numbers were on the superintendent's presentation.
I'm not sure, did I?
Oh, you didn't put it?
No, because I only highlighted what
Gotcha.
I recommended.
Yep, so as of last year's enrollment was just over 400 students.
For Federal Terrace? That seems high.
That seems really high, because there's only one per grade level.
I'm sorry.
215.
Yeah, sorry, 215, correct.
Because I know there's only one per grade level teacher.
Yep, serving grades TK through 6.
Yes. And where is that proximity, to Lincoln, how far? And then Highland and Cooper? So if we were to consider that school, and we're going to be redoing our boundaries anyways, to who goes to what school, the 215 could be less, just redoing the boundaries. But I know it's been hard, from hearing from the teachers from that school, it's been hard because they don't have anyone to collaborate with since there's only one teacher per grade level. There's no one to talk with or to work with. So that's been a real big challenge is what I've heard for the last few years. Anyways, what else does anyone else have? Trustee Jacobo?
Really quick, I'm kind of going back to Pennycook because I'm just now remembering this question I had yesterday. I was contemplating on this whole thing. I completely forgot the name of the program. I want to say DHS. HHS.
It's the Deaf, Hard, and Hearing, DHH.
Okay, thank you for correcting me.
No problem.
If anything does decide to happen with Pennycook, what would happen to that program? Because I've spoke with a lot of community members and a lot of people take that program really serious, even if it doesn't affect their child. I think it's something really good something really unique, matter of fact, that VCUSD has. It's the only program in Solano County, right, if I'm correct.
So we have the primary to, I want to say, grade 6 of the DHH, but then for the county, not just for Vallejo, but then outside of that, the county has the older version of that.
Okay.
That program specifically, and actually one of the instructors was at the town hall for that program, and she made a really good point, which was, it's not about the location, it's about the program being together. And that program could exist at any one of our schools that has space for it. So, right now, it does house, that program is housed at Pennycook campus, but that program, if we closed Pennycook, that program would be put in a different location. So we don't lose the program. That program would travel to a different site. And students who attend that program, for the most part, I don't know the exact numbers, but typically get transported for that program.
By the school?
By the school district.
All right. Thank you so much.
Trustee De Leon?
I had two questions. One, just piggybacking off of what Sophie said, kind of. So the program initially, I don't know how it works. So the kids go during school hours, or?
For the DHH,
Yeah.
it's like a regular school day for the kids.
So,
It's a specialized classroom program for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. So
Okay.
they have a special teacher who signs, they have staff that sign, but
Okay,
they are learning during the regular school day.
so
their
it's just,
classroom.
it's necessary, yeah, so it's their own classroom then?
It's their own classroom. They
Okay.
have an individualized learning.
So as long as it can be fit at another school, we can
We would
move
have
it?
to move the program to another campus.
Okay.
Yes. And that's one of the considerations for all the campuses, because the capacity of a special day classroom is much smaller. So if we have 4 classrooms that are special day classes with a capacity of about 12 students versus a capacity of about 30 students, we need to use more classroom spaces to house those programs. So the same number of students who might be in a class of 30 using one room, the deaf and hard of hearing classroom for that same number of students might need 3 classrooms, right? So it's the ratios kind of have to be considered differently.
So, for that, would we only are able to use one campus for that program though? Or can it be, because I'm thinking like based off of where kids live or,
So there are special classrooms designed for specialized learning needs around our district. We can't have them all at every school, right? So the deaf and hard of hearing program pulls students from across the district around the city, right? And they receive bus transportation because of
okay.
that. And in addition to that, program draws students from other districts in Solano County. We draw in students from, say, Fairfield or somewhere else specifically to use our deaf and hard of hearing program.
okay,
And then they pay us for that
Okay.
service.
okay. And then the other question is like way off of, not necessarily, it's still on schools. I know we what's the word? We have a program using, what's that school called? Franklin, the middle school?
Right, the non-public school that's gonna lease the facility.
So they're using the whole Franklin?
They're using the buildings. Part of that campus is leased to GVRD.
Yeah.
So the gymnasium, the field,
Mhm.
that's GVRD. The administration building, the classroom spaces is being leased now by Rising Star Academy, which is a non-public school. As a non-public school, that's a private school, so there are some differences. So some of our properties, if we want to keep, like, let's talk about Lincoln. If Lincoln was no longer just a regular school, we most likely would not turn around and sell that property. One, we've used bond dollars to renovate parts of that school, so we're not gonna be able to do that and turn around and sell it. There's very few properties that we could sell to generate revenue. The former VCS Springstown campus is one that we could sell, which is we're in the process. But that process takes a year and a half, 2 years, or for the board knows that process could take even more, depending on what we sell it for. So temporarily, that site now is the Family Resource Center. One, because we don't want to keep our facilities empty, so we want to use them. One, to avoid blight and other things that could happen. So for now, what was formerly VCS is the Family Resource Center. Now in 2 or 3 years, if we do sell that property, we might be relocating those services to a different site. So there are a lot of moving parts, but we're limited on which buildings we can fully surplus, meaning allow us to sell or lease. John Finney Education Complex, your school, is one of those facilities that gives us options for revenue.
Okay.
Trustee Arba?
Just a quick question, if Superintendent Aurelio, you might know, how much money do we get per student for a full school year?
So it's based on ADA, so this is where we talk about attendance mattering.
Yeah.
Because we are funded right now, conservatively, we use around 89%. So for every, if say a kid came 100% of the time, we would get 15,000 roughly per pupil.
Depending on grade level.
Yeah, the grade span matters, more money for high school kids,
Yeah.
less money. But on average, you would say 15,000, but we're not getting the full 15,000, we're getting maybe 89% of that 15,000 because it's based off of attendance. So that's why we talk about even 1% increase as a district, going from 89 to 90 or 90 to 91, is over $1 million every time we increase by a percentage.
So maybe even more so than filling up the schools, we look more into improving the attendance, and I think that's where.
I agree.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree.
And actually, I did want to make a comment on the attendance stuff. I think, for example, the September Attendance Awareness Month stuff, it wasn't emphasized enough, especially for Bethel. Our activities director got this stuff really late. So I think there needs to be more from the districts on promoting that and making sure schools have enough info about that, because I don't think schools get enough info quick enough on that. But
Yeah.
that's a question.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I mean, we're having this discussion around closures and consolidation. If you think back to when I started, what I read to you on the beginning, this is only part of the difficult decisions the board is going to need to make by December. The second piece of it, this seems hard now, the second piece is going to feel even harder, because now we're talking about cutting jobs. And that's the reality, because our budget deficit, the structural deficit we have, closing schools is not going to bridge that gap. It's a drop in the bucket relative to what we have to cut. So that next phase of our discussion, when we start talking about, here are the staff members, here are the administrators, here are the teachers, here are the classified ranks, that's going to be brutal. It's, there's no way of showing that. So when we think about the school closures component, that's one part of a bigger puzzle for us to stay solvent as a district. What we do have, as Assistant Superintendent Fernandez mentioned, is we do have capital dollars, but that can't go to pay for salaries. That can't go to do some of these things, but we can potentially add a parking lot here, move things around there. But what we can't do is pay everybody we have at the same level that we currently exist at.
Hard decisions.
Right. So, we are already starting that planning process as an executive cabinet, and we're going pretty aggressive in what we're looking at. I've tasked the cabinet to think about what would it look like if we reduced our workforce by 30%. So let that sink in. 30% of the people you see on a day-to-day basis would be gone.
Do you have something?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I do. Ooh. Yeah, I do have a question, but, well, I did have a question, but then you brought up the 30%? Well, I know we increased the amount that the subs and everybody, that they get paid. I think this is more of a question. Why don't, dedicated subs, why don't they get paid? What is it, yearly? Like for summer and holidays and stuff?
They're not a FTE, which is a full-time employee. They're just as needed.
So that's not even district, that's like higher up wise?
Right, but the dedicated subs would be receiving the sub rate that we just approved.
Yeah.
Yes, but they're not part of a bargaining group,
Mhm.
and so they're really at-will employees, and they work during this normal school year.
You said
Full-time employee.
FT, okay.
So with the scenario we have up here, because we have to go through a few other scenarios, with Federal Terrace, how much would be savings for it to close, and where would the students go?
Well, as far as students where they would go, let me go back to. So the scenario, we had Federal Terrace kind of splitting, right? Some with the lower grades going to Lincoln, some going to Cooper, some going to Highland. The reality is, as we consider closures, it is an opportunity as a district, not just based on these 7 campuses, but as a district to really look at our boundaries and our residential areas, because there's a bit of a reset. If the board, let's say you decide to go with the recommendations I made, we're now in the span of 2 years closing 5 schools. So we have closed 2 schools. We would potentially close 3 more schools. So when I started, we had 20. We're dropping down to 15 in the span of 2 years. That's going to require us to really look at the whole map as a whole, not just these neighborhoods. We probably will do some shifting that will move our populations around a bit. And I think that would be an equitable thing to do, is to really look at all the boundaries. So it's hard for me to say exactly this kid's going to that school right now without really mapping it out. And I know in the report there are plot maps, and you can kind of see generally next to the residential school how far away they are and how far they would need to travel. And that's how you came up with the transportation factor.
Right, right. And so with over 200 students at Federal Terrace, there just isn't enough capacity at Lincoln, even though Lincoln's probably the closest school. So we'd really have to be looking at either Highland or Cooper to accommodate at least a portion of the kids.
And the reboundaries, like we're just.
Yeah, we'd have to
But
rebound.
what's the cost savings of closing 5
So
schools?
the estimate is $400,000 annually.
400.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions about that scenario? Before we go to another scenario? We're just looking at scenarios. Go to another school? Okay. Any others? Who has a question?
When will we look into redrawing the maps? The boundaries, I mean.
I think part of it is kind of an if-then, right? So if we close 2, if we close 1, that's going to determine what kind of drawing we need to do. It's hard to predetermine all of that without knowing where we're ending up. So that's part of the push on you all to have a decision by December. Is there's a lot of work post-decision because we just lived it and we want to do better. We know we need to do better in that post-decision factor, both with our community, our staff, and just everything that needs to happen once a decision is triggered.
I guess I've never asked this question before. In a real world, Vallejo Unified School District, with the number of kids that we have and all that, how many, what is our capacity of functioning as far as elementary? How many elementary should we have? How many high schools should we have? How many then? The realization is that, it's just that clear.
So as I mentioned, I've tasked the staff, we're really deeply looking at staffing ratios, where we're at, but I'm also looking at our size of our district comparable to other districts. So I actually spent some time today looking at one of my former districts, San Leandro, which has 8,800 students, ADA, so not that far off from where we're at. They have 8 elementaries, 2 middles, 1 comprehensive high school, 1 alternative high school, 1 adult high school. Their central office administration, we have, even though they're slightly smaller than us, we have almost 10 more managers in our central office. So when we're talking about cuts, we're looking at everything top to bottom, not just cutting in the classrooms or cutting at school sites. It's going to be essentially a complete reorganization and trim down of central office top to bottom.
That's the real world. Okay, that's what we should be banking all these closures on, the real world, because that's what we're going to be faced with the next couple of years. And so we need to start now. We need to start somewhere. And to say that we're not where we should be comparatively, we need to get going.
All right, we have Cooper up. All right, with Cooper, what could the capacity be, the full capacity?
Okay, so at Cooper Elementary, the capacity is approximately 720 students.
If it was full,
If
okay,
it
what's
was
the
full.
current capacity?
The current enrollment is, or as of, oh, that one the superintendent has.
325? 363, okay. And what is the cost savings that we can have?
The estimated cost savings for Cooper is approximately $450,000 annually.
450,000, and where will the students go?
I think the expectation is Highland.
All current 363 students?
Correct. Although there may be some
I know there may be
attendance
boundaries,
boundaries,
but
yep.
that still seems a lot of, that's a lot. What's the current enrollment at Highland?
So the current enrollment at Highland is just over 500 students. So it's a large school, but it's also a campus with a large capacity. Its capacity is over 1,000.
I know Trustee De Leon is hers up, and then Trustee Flores. Go ahead.
I don't know do you know how many students John Finney, is it as a whole, do we know how many students they hold? Or is it per program?
The total population currently
Yeah.
at Finney, I want to say it's just over 200 total. Yeah.
So we wouldn't overflow if we went to Cooper. It would be,
No, John Finney would have a lot of room there still. Like you're not going to fill that campus if
Okay.
we move John Finney there. And the one thing I wanted, when I talked about the proximity to things like you have, where are the hospitals? You have Sutter and you have Kaiser around, like they're pretty centrally located around those. So trying to think through, programs in the future for John Finney students, could we partner with these hospitals, for example, build out those CTE-based programs for kids who want to get some workforce experience?
thinking about the students at my school, because I'm not going to be there, but But I know one thing about us, I guess it is a question, but it's kind of funny on my end. One thing about us having pouches this year is when our principal asked us, or like if I go in and I ask, what would help, as far as, lunch and stuff with the pouches, they asked our principal to build a playground. So if we had lunch, would we be able to use the playgrounds? Well, because that's like, even to this day, like they keep asking our principal to build a playground because we have nothing to do at lunch because they don't have phones. And I've seen, like, even driving by the schools, I'm like, I want to get on their playground. Like, driving past Cooper, it looks so fun. We would be able to use them? Or is that up to our principal? I'm going to come back. I'm going to bring it back.
How far is Cooper to Highland for the transportation? Oh, did Trustee Flores, did you get to? No, I have. Okay, how far is it from Cooper to Highland to send those 300-some students?
It's just under a mile.
Under a mile.
What's that main street there that they'd cross?
Tuolumne.
Okay. Anything else about this scenario with Cooper going to Highland and the cost savings of about 400-some thousand? Anything else before we go to another scenario?
Thank you, Selena.
The transportation impact on Cooper to Highland, what does that look like? I'm trying to find that slide.
Hold on. So, Cooper to Highland, it was yellow in transportation. One slide up. Yeah, here we go. This is the transportation slide.
So it's just shy of red, huh?
So, yeah, 70 kids potentially.
Okay. Yeah, I just wonder because I know that Highland is like a one-way entrance. It's a very
Yes. Neighborhood.
isolated.
Yes. in that
I-
neighborhood.
It's, I mean, if we're having issues on Mare Island, yeah. Anyhow, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay, when you start doing this type of analogy and start putting these two schools together and all that stuff, do you actually go out to the sites?
I have
Do you-
visited Highland, yes.
Huh?
I have visited Highland, yes.
Okay, so you know,
Yeah, I've seen the one-way street.
okay,
It's
you
quite.
know the one-way street. Now, have
Yes.
you been there when it's high traffic?
I haven't been during a drop-off or a pickup.
Yeah, okay. I'm just, it's a mess.
Understandable.
It's a mess.
Then why don't we look at the opposite?
Yeah, and
Then why don't we look at the opposite, Highland to Cooper, which is right there?
Then there's that overflow capacity.
Well, once you redo the boundaries, it might not be. Because the boundaries are redone anyways, regardless, so.
So, I just want to share, right? All of these scenarios can shift based on where those boundaries are drawn to. This was a scenario and their analysis based on our current boundaries, not a shift of boundaries. So we tasked them with Cooper to Highland, Highland to Cooper, not considering shifting. Even Penny to Stephen was not Penny to Stephen and then lop off pieces to go to Glen Cove and Wardlaw. So I just want to be clear, like, they were tasked with a very specific set of scenarios. But there is nuance in what we can do when decisions are made, when we look at the big picture.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is there's concerns with the egress in and out of Highland. What would the savings be? Okay, I have questions about Highland. What's the capacity of Highland? You said over 1,000 students, and there's currently 500, am I correct?
Correct.
What is the savings of closing Highland?
Approximately 650,000.
Wow, okay.
Annually.
So that's a high
Yeah,
ticket.
it's a large campus.
And it's a difficult, like we just heard, for drop-off and pickup, or just to get to, in and out. All right, and we also saw for transportation, and where they would go. I see trustee Arbab.
First off, could you pull up the map of Highland? Just a question, what's the adult to student ratio at Highland? Do we have that info?
I don't have that same analysis because I was focused on the ones I
Oh, okay.
recommended. We can come back to that.
Okay, yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
Trustee De Leon.
Talking about other, what was the word?
Boundaries?
Other, I guess, options, I guess. When it got brought up about because we are gonna move or will possibly move the, not dividers, boundaries. So I don't remember who said it about Highland moving to Cooper the other way around. If that was a possibility, that question got answered. I was gonna say, would Finney be able to fit at Highlands, but we very well would. So I remember. Yeah, I remember.
Anything else for the scenario of Highland? It's a very high savings school, as far as money-wise. Trustee De Leon? Oh, and Trustee Hodges next.
We were talking about the one-way street and everything over there, the same way we were talking about Stephen Manor and being able to open up different ways, because I've never been to Highlands, so I don't know. There's no other way we can open anything else. No.
It's in a neighborhood.
Oh.
Yeah, I know that guy.
Is there an ability to maybe curb the parking along the entrance?
So this parking lot is ours,
Mhm.
the back parking lot, and then I think there's a fence here. I mean, theoretically, could you build something out and extend this further? I don't know. It doesn't, I mean, that's for parking, but I don't think that addresses a drop-off.
What about along that one-way street?
So the one-way street, yes, so this is the one-way, and you can see all the stacked cars just in this image, right? There is. So this is higher, right? You go down the stairs. It's elevated. The street's elevated above the school. It's built.
I think one of the important things when you're looking at these situations, and this is a perfect example of it, right? So you've got the one long street, right? There are environmental things that you're gonna have to change with a number of these, with these scenarios that you're looking at. You pointed out the one earlier when you were looking at Stephen Manor. Again, so there's some environmental changes that you would have to look at here. I mean, you could look at this a variety of ways. That could be either the world's longest drop-off zone, right? Or it can be, a clogged street. So are there environmental changes that you can work with the city about the parking along the street? I'm sure there are environmental changes that you could implement as far as drop-off procedures. I mean, there are people that look at this and engineer drop-off procedures for something this large. The great thing here, you've got a lot of real estate to work with for drop-off, ingress, egress when you looked at the former school, it's pinched by space. But again, there are some creative solutions that might be able to be looked at environmentally. A major thing to look at is what do you have facility structure-wise? You have a very large facility that can house a lot of students inside of your school district.
Right.
Not
It has the
answers
most-
to anything that you're looking at, but just an input to it.
I mean, this has one of the largest capacity in sort of classroom spaces. The other potential, factor could be, do we do staggered drop-off times? There are things that maybe would lessen the impact.
Trustee Flores?
Oh, sorry. Just gonna, there we go.
So I'm just kind of trying to factor in all the different things we see in the reports, and I'm looking at the summary of environmental considerations and traffic conditions, whether it's Highland to Cooper, or Cooper to Highland. Type of impacts identified for both traffic conditions is an issue. So I think we want to look at that too, especially for myself, just going to the Highland campus. That's a doubling the amount of cars, impacting not just the parents dropping off, but you also got to think about the residents that live there, trying to back out of their driveways. And yeah, so just kind of something else, just kind of I'm putting everybody's ear, just looking at the identified impact, and traffic conditions is one of the identified impacts on this. And one other thing that I want to ask, and maybe I'm just not hearing it correctly or interpret it wrong, but I feel like you all were given the task to do this EIA report based on the boundaries right now. And now I'm being told, oh, but things might change once the boundaries get changed. How can I make an accurate decision on this if I'm being told this is based on one boundaries, but once the boundaries change, well, things might change here too. So can we clarify how a boundary change is going to affect this EIA report? Because at this point, for myself, then I'm not looking at an accurate report if we're going to change the boundaries before, when are the boundaries changing? Is it before or after the decision? So for myself, I just feel like at this point, this is not an accurate report if we're going to base it on changed boundaries.
So I'd say specifically with boundaries, let's use Pennycook and Stephen as an example, because we're looking at one, either Penny going to Stephen, Stephen going to Penny. If, based on the location of Pennycook, let me go back to Pennycook, there's an opportunity, if we do consolidate Pennycook into Stephen, to take those residents that are on the eastern side, northeast, southeast side, that would be currently mapped to Pennycook, and potentially not have them go all the way across to Stephen, but then it might be closer for them to attend Wardlaw or Glen Cove. So that's the potential shift if needed. Doesn't mean we have to do that, but looking at how, if we took all of Pennycook and put them all in Stephen, that might actually be helpful for our families to say, well, instead of going all the way to Stephen, if you live on the eastern side, you might be closer to Glen Cove or Wardlaw now versus where you were originally closer to Pennycook. So that's the shift. It wouldn't be a massive change. And then the other factor is if we are closing multiple schools, there's the opportunity to kind of look at the big picture, because it might be an adjustment, not just of these schools that are impacted, but all of our schools. Is there good distribution across Vallejo?
Yep.
Right, so it is an if-then. It's hard for me to say this is exactly where we need to draw the line now, because I don't know what would close right now.
So, Superintendent, what I hear you saying is that we need to make a decision on which schools to close. Then we work on the boundaries.
Right, because I think if you accepted my recommendation, that would trigger us to start drawing out the maps, knowing exactly, okay, if Cooper closed, are there kids that are on the north end of Cooper that need to go north versus going south? And so we're not gonna get 100% of Cooper kids going to Highland. So it's hard to make that determination without knowing direction yet. And like I said, that coupled with our reality that we face, that on top of all this, we're also gonna be reducing a lot of staff. And so all those things are connected.
Did she have her hand up first?
I don't know if this is an option, but is there any way for the schools that we would decide to close? Is there any way instead of, okay, well, wait, if we were to change the boundaries, would we change it for the whole entire Vallejo?
I think that's still to be determined, because
But does it have to be like that, or you can, you have the opportunity to only change boundaries for the certain places, or would you have to do all of it?
I think it's an opportunity for the district to kind of not just right size by physical buildings, but re-look at everything. Are families going to their nearest schools? Do we need to redraw maps? Do we need to draw them based on the size of what those schools will look like? Because if you have one school that's getting to 1,000 students, but another school that sits at 200 students, that doesn't look right either. So you have to look at the whole picture, even though right now we're focused on these 7
So
schools.
ultimately, if you change the boundaries, it would be for every single, the whole entire Vallejo, though.
We would, and we also consider things like, you're not gonna have to move schools because you started there and now the boundary changed. So we would honor our families' commitment to our schools. So if you're a kid that's at Wardlaw and somehow the boundary changed and now you gotta go to a different school, we're not gonna make kids move at that point. It's usually typically applied to new enrollment. So the boundaries, when they're adjusted, it's about new enrollment.
Yeah.
When new families come into the system, they now have a new set of boundaries to address.
Well, because I think you just answered my question, but I was asking if there was any way, even if we didn't change the boundaries necessarily, if that wasn't something in the end that we found we had to do, if there was still a way for us to still support parents in, if they want to, it's not necessarily where they are, go to a closer school.
Right.
Even if the boundaries didn't change, is there any way that we could support the parents with doing that still, though?
So one of the things we did with the last set of closures, we prioritized the impacted families. So if you were at Mare Island Health and Fitness, you had priority. If you were at Loma Vista, you had priority. Priority to go back to your neighborhood school if you were there on a transfer, priority to sort of select schools. And my understanding, and the board can correct me, I think we would try to honor those same things with any of the impacted schools that we close, that we would try to prioritize for the current families, so they don't, because they're being displaced, right? So we want to make sure that we give them every opportunity to select where they want to go, and of course support that.
Okay.
From historical history, I would be very careful about changing boundaries. And if I did go at it, I'd go at it with a soft glove. Because equity is equity. And if we don't look at that, we might find ourselves in the middle of redlining, to put it lightly. And we don't want to go back to that, because once upon a time it was that. I can say that because I lived it. So we have to be very careful about how we redistribute these lines.
I think especially for the ones we have closed and the ones we decide to close, those are the ones to focus on. And then if there needs to be any adjustments for others, we'll have to discuss it. But the great point, thank you. What would, since Highland seems like the highest profitable that we would save if it was closed, since Highland is tucked in the neighborhood, could it be sold?
My understanding, and Mr. Fernandez can contribute to that, I believe we've used some significant bond dollars on Highland. And it's that same scenario we're facing with a number of our campuses, because we've spent renovation dollars and bond money. We've it's a kind of a bit of a trap for us because there are limitations on which buildings, facilities we can sell outright versus, say, lease or try to get public agencies to come in. So Highland would be one of those that would be tough to sell.
It just looks like such a neighborhood, it would be good for houses, but, okay. And then for Cooper, has there been a lot of bond money put into Cooper?
Yes.
So they both have had a lot, but we're thinking of closing it, though. There's a recommend to reuse it as John Finney Complex, which 6 years ago, I was part of the board to close and reopen, make the John Finney Complex. It's only been there 6 years. Anyways, next scenario. Okay.
So what we do know about the John Finney Complex, and I think in my slide, I'm going to go back to it real quick. So, you know, it can be sold because that's had limited bond dollars. I think the only bond dollars were to paint the exterior. It could be potentially a site, you know, based off of, if we were to sell, it could be housing. We could go down the path of looking at, is this something that we want to partner with someone to do workforce housing? And there's been a lot of, you know, energy discussion about if we grow in the future, if we do some things, I've heard people ask about a second comprehensive middle school. That's not to say we're ready to do that, but if we were going to go down that pathway, this site is the former site of Vallejo Middle School. So it is conducive to potentially being a middle school again in the future. But that's a different discussion that would, you know, really we would want to plan, because I think we'd be looking at phasing out maybe K6s, K8s, and building out a middle school. So we'd have 2 feeder schools. Currently, we only have 1 comprehensive middle school as a feeder school, and that's Hogan. But this gives us some options with this campus. It's one of the few campuses left that we could theoretically sell for revenue. And then, you know, on that campus, we have the Plunge as well, which sits there, unoccupied. I've heard wonderful things about what it used to be. So,
As far as the Plunge, I've tried for years to see if we can get grants or money to repurpose, but the ADA the pipes and to make it ADA accessible, it would cost too many millions of dollars, and it'd just be too expensive so that just sits there and rots even further because of the cost it would take to try to, and there weren't any grants to try to find. So that scenario I've tried to go through for the last 7 years because it's such a wasted spot. So I don't even know what possibility in the future. I remember though when we closed the old John Finney campus about 6-7 years ago, we thought it was great having it across the street from the Vallejo High campus just for accessibility and for, but I was just thinking also, years ago we were thinking we closed Franklin. One of the possibilities of repurposing Franklin was to make it the district office eventually. So the district office would be more central Vallejo for more accessibility to everyone instead of over the bridge. Well, now when I'm looking at this campus, I'm thinking, we didn't do that with Franklin, but could that be the district office? Potentially. But another thing I've been fighting for 7 years, or 8 years, 7 years, to get the deed to this building to show it's an asset. So we can, anyways, but that's another topic. So it sounds like there's another scenario that could be central office, and it's very central Vallejo. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
well, and you mentioned we don't have the deed to this building. We got an update this evening from the city, and it really hasn't moved at all when it comes to getting this deed. We pay rent on this building, I believe, right, Mr. Fernandez? We do. So we're 40,000 for the year. So we do. I mean, it's not 40,000 is 40,000, but we are paying rent for a building that we could be housed somewhere else. So it's something to consider. maybe we actually have a real boardroom.
This is $3,333 a month. So it's $3,333 a month for this payment, if I did that right. Trustee De Leon?
40,000 for what?
It's $40,000 a month.
A month?
A month? For what?
To rent this building.
But I thought we owned the building. But I was told this was, so we are making payments, but I'm trying to fight to get the deed.
We are making payments. Let me,
But I thought we were,
our
okay.
last, I'm looking at one of our last purchase orders for it. It was 43,000. I'm assuming that's per month, but I'm gonna double check right now, so. give me a
Yes,
minute.
please, because I
Give me a
didn't
minute,
hear
yeah.
that. And I know, just trying to get the deed for, to show that we own this building as an asset, so if we ever wanted to sell it and make money, but there's so many loopholes because it's an island, it used to be a Navy base, there could be a frog somewhere, something like that. Anyways, that was a joke between Dr. Young and I, for the Hidden Brook property. There was frogs that stopped that property from selling. Anyways, where is that property being sold, Hidden Brook property? Trustee De Leon, let's get back on topic. Just had to have a little humor there.
So, okay, so the city owns the plunge, we don't, right? We do. Why is it still closed?
Because of the ADA and the millions of dollars, all the pipes that are below are all cracked so bad. And to get ADA accessibility for disabled people, or anyone, it would be so many millions of dollars to actually tear everything out and put a new pool in. We don't have the millions of dollars to do that.
The building is all
I've been
just
trying for
dirt.
years. It's been deteriorating for years.
So is that why it closed?
It doesn't have ADA accessibility.
I have, they
So I was
think
looking
I
into
know.
grants, but we couldn't find a grant.
They think I know, and I have everybody at my school asking me, oh, well, can you go to the district meetings and can you ask them if we can open the plunge again? I got my answer.
But I did try to with the 2x2 and with the city to see if they can find grants as well.
And-
And also with GVRD to see if they would want a partnership with the Parks and Recs to see if they would want to own, to help, if they helped pay for it and it was brought back to upgraded, but they weren't able to find a grant either. So I tried many different scenarios the last number of years.
That's what you were talking about when you said for about 6, 7 years.
Yes, one of the things. No, one is the lease for this and the plunge. That's just on the list of some of the things.
Wait, so we don't own this?
I was told we do, but we're having a hard time getting the deed.
Okay.
Anything else for the John Finney complex? Questions or comments? Are there other properties of scenarios we need to look at?
Do you have a question?
About John Finney? Oh, the John Finney complex, can you move that slide back up to what we could use it for? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here it is, right here, but anyway. You say you can sell it, use it for workforce housing. Doesn't that require building?
It would.
Sell? What's the market like? The market is not good to be selling anything. So the only thing that looks any kind of future is a middle school or a district office. To me, I mean,
Can we do both?
Huh?
Can it be a middle school and the district office?
I've seen that scenario before, thank you. Trustee Hodges, yes, I've seen that concept before. So, that's not gonna cost as much money as it's gonna put workforce, and we probably won't sell it in this market.
I can't tell you how much it will sell for you because it hasn't been appraised.
Don't get me started about selling property, okay?
But as a model, we did get the former VCS/Springstown campus appraised, right? We did that appraisal already. And I believe for multifamily housing, the appraisal was 11.5 million.
Appraisal is fine.
I know.
Don't spend it.
No,
Who's
Right.
gonna buy it? At 11.5.
that takes work, I know.
Who's gonna buy it? Oh, we have one in the oven now. It's
I
6
understand.
something, Okay?
I
For
understand.
3 years it's been in the oven.
More.
Mhm.
Trustee De Leon?
This isn't just a question. If you could think about it, because I'm pretty sure you've been on Finney's campus, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, just a question. Where would you put the actual, what did we just call it, boardroom? Like not even based off of money or anything, but like just thinking about the campus, where would you put it?
The big room when you come in, right?
The PV Center?
I mean, we don't know. That's down the road. You don't know. That's just a possibility.
I know, that's why I asked, like, if you guys, like, just being on the campus had to think about it, where would you put it?
I think that's a great room for,
To be determined.
It's too narrow.
but you can divide it
We
off.
barely
There's-
fit in there, and we go to school there.
Well, we'll figure it out. That's down the road.
We have ants. Help, please. We have ants. Mr. Pasio, we have ants.
No,
Help.
no, that's
Mr.
Fernandez.
Fernandez?
That's Fernandez. That's not.
We need
Torres.
help, please. We have ants.
He's the ants guy.
It's stressing me out. So, and they said we've had them since like the summer. I don't know because I didn't have summer school, but it wasn't even at Finney. We need help.
Can we go back to,
I don't want to interrupt, but we gotta get focused on this.
can we get back to
This
the
is not
slide of the,
that time.
can we get back to the slide of the scenarios, please? I think we've covered a lot of them. I want to make sure, though, that there's none we've missed. Stefan and Pennycook, yeah, we did those. Vallejo High, Jesse Bell.
So we've gone through all of them?
That's what we're trying to make sure. Federal Terrace, Lincoln, Cooper, Highland, Lincoln, Cooper, and John Finney Complex. So it looks like we did cover all the scenarios. And we got the numbers of the savings. We got questions, Mr. Fernandez and others, about costs that could be associated. We also talked a lot about transportation, either difficulties or location restrictions to transportation. We also talked about parking restrictions, multi-use room feeding restrictions, or how to just feed our students.
Multiple scenarios.
So it looks like we've got a lot of discussion. Am I missing any of the? Oh, and then I think a really big one was, as citizens of Vallejo, we really hit on who the sensitive areas where we want to protect certain groups going forward to make sure that programs and the help that's needed for our city stays intact.
That we uphold Pillar 4.
Uphold Pillar 4. So everyone got, is there any other highlights that I'm missing? I think we're also concerned about if a site already has a lot of students and adding more students, the added congestion for drop-off, pickup, and parking, what would that add? And we need to look at that. Can you do stagger times? You can't do stagger times for drop-off, pickup, or would that even really help? I really appreciate that we looked at going back and forth with each scenario. I think that is extremely helpful, and actually for me, it helped me see that actually I think maybe the opposite of some I liked even a little better personally. So I'm glad that we have that much flexibility looking at these scenarios that going forward. And we also looked a lot about, could closing a campus accrue more cost? I'm trying to remember the scenario. Some sites with just the security and if we want to maintain programs, because we're getting to a point, we've closed a few campuses, we're closing more. To repurpose, do you really have that many repurposing you can do as a district? And then offset the cost of your savings. Are you really saving if you're still doing all these repurposing on too many sites? So you got to look at that as well. Are they really closed and you're saving, or you're still maintaining and spending money on them? So is it beneficial? And then also what you said, which was very, and I think everyone heard this, 30%, if we're looking at that of cutting in the budget, this is a small amount. This is more resizing the district appropriately so we have programs and staff that works more efficient within what we have, correct? So it's not so much about saving the money, it's more about right-sizing the district. It looks like other scenarios that are coming after is going to be the more hard, if I'm heard that correctly. So I would like to hear now the next steps, and that we've given you all this information about even some of these going backwards, the ones you suggested. Where do we go next?
So thank you all. I know these discussions are, like I said, always difficult. The one thing for me and the staff, so I gave us a starting point, a starting recommendation. Close Lincoln, close Cooper, close Pennycook, relocate John Finney. Now, part of our task is to take the information we heard this evening, and we did hear some different things. However, what I need to gauge at some point, and it could be individually with each of you as board members, I need to start to gauge where you are landing as far as closures and closing schools. Because, you know, we've talked about this, and, you know, we want to make a decision. Now, you all have your own individual vote in this process. But we need guidance, obviously, as a staff. Right now, I'm recommending three school closures. But if it's the will of the board to close 1, 2, 3, 4, that's something that will need to be determined at some point, and fairly soon, so we know what direction to take us in. The other piece for us, as we're developing the other component, the budget reductions and staffing reductions, the impact that right sizing has is, if I'm looking at, and I threw a pretty hefty number out there, 30% of a workforce, keeping the same footprint, I'm now spreading the 70% I have left across our current footprint versus a smaller footprint. So it's just all those factors play into it. Lincoln, we showed, has a higher staff to student ratio because we know that community needs services, and we also, it's because of a small footprint, we have to provide sort of some of the same levels of staffing. There's still an office manager, there's a campus supervisor, there's all these things to hold that school open. So all those factors play into it, and it's something I need you all to consider. Are we gonna spread the resources we do have? Right now we have 18 schools, one is the adult school. Or is it next year we're looking at spreading those same resources with 15 schools? That's something we need to determine. And that's the guidance we're gonna need from the board. But we know it's a tough decision. No one wants to close schools, period. But we're at a crossroads when it comes to our student population and all those moving parts. Yes, we want better attendance. Yes, we want higher performance. Yes, we want to keep our families from choosing to leave our district. And all those pieces are in motion, but we don't always realize that immediately. So the board has heard about the efforts we're making to change our inter-district process to ensure that our families choose Vallejo first. All of those things doesn't happen overnight. However, our budget reality is hitting us now, not tomorrow. And so we are feeling and seeing the pressure of a county office that's telling us, yes, you exited receivership, but you're now on step 2 of going back. We've skipped step 1. We're in step 2 of going back into receivership based on our budget, based on where we're at. And there's 5 steps, just to be clear. So I want to leave you with that because I know you have a tough decision to make. But ultimately, you have to remember your fiduciary responsibility. We do not want to go backwards. And some of that is making these really tough calls.
Thank you. I personally, I would like to, before individual meetings occur, I'd rather all of us get information together first. Far as questions and concerns that were asked tonight about all of these scenarios and the actual savings and the incurred costs that could come with doing these scenarios, the traffic, the parking, the added busing cost, we talked about a scenario of having Lincoln stay open and making it with all the resources and put it to capacity as a full school again. We talked about maybe that Federal Terrace would close because it only has one teacher per grade level. Where would those go? So there's different scenarios that were brought up. I think that all the concerns and questions, if we can have another meeting with all of those addressed, with all of us together, because individually I think it gets too, I didn't like how that worked last time. I didn't like the dinners. I mean, yeah, I like a dinner, but I didn't like the separate, I didn't like being separate, and it made me feel pitted against some people. And I don't want to be put in that position again. I want us all getting the same information together, the same ears. Then, if you want to do your talks individual, great. But I don't think we're ready for those talks until enough information, and I don't want to feel pitted again. So I want to learn from the past and go forward with what we've learned to try to make it smoother. But I also think we've seen some issues with Maryland Charter School going to Maryland Fitness Academy, big site to a big site, and they're really compact. Parents have had issues, classrooms have had issues, moving had issues. Some things are not there, some things are there. We don't want to lose students, we don't want to lose families, and we don't want to cause more frustration that's needed. Again, lessons learned. So we have to backward plans till December 17th. Whatever way we can get the information and talk about the scenarios before that, and eventually work our way to that final decision, December 17th, I think we have time. So I understand it's scary, we don't want to go into receivership, I understand that, but I don't want to put that fear, especially when we already talked about this isn't the big piece of the puzzle. The 30% and the piece that comes next is the big piece of the puzzle. This isn't going to save us a lot. So I want to make sure that we get that scary thing, kind of see it for reality and not use it, because last time that was used a bit, and that also I didn't like at all. So I want to be more respectful of, we're all going through a lot. I want to make sure this is done where we all get the same thing. Then I just don't want anyone pitted again. That was very uncomfortable.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. I have one point of clarification and a question kind of linked to it. So we have a board study session, I think currently scheduled for October 15th. So it's another opportunity to come and look at the details. The final EIA report will be presented to the board, and then at a subsequent meeting, there will be a board decision on any closures, consolidations. If you recall from how we handled this in phase one, we requested feedback from the board and we presented resolutions for all the different iterations or scenarios that would be available so that everybody was clear going into that meeting how that was going to work. For purposes of GFS, JPA, and their preparation of a final EIA report, are there certain items of information or questions that you have as it relates to the metrics that you want them to integrate into that report? Or are the questions that have been presented tonight more for the bigger picture?
I think to answer each of the concerns that were brought up by everyone, the busing, the traffic, the neighborhood schools where you can't get in and out, it's a one-way street.
Okay.
Or that there's not a multi-use room to even feed our kids at certain areas, or there's not parking even for our staff at certain areas. Or the very vulnerable population that even if you provide them transportation, it's still gonna be hard on them. So there's so many different things that were talked about, but I would like to see the scenario brought back and how could we keep Lincoln and really use it as and bring it to a model school again. And maybe there's other scenarios doing the opposite of what it was, the recommendation from the staff. For the Cooper one, I don't know. We didn't do a lot of discussion on that one. And it sounds like the John Finney complex can go anywhere. So that, pretty much. I mean, I understand the medical facilities are there if they were needed. But I think we need more for Cooper too, because that's a big site. And Highland is already a very big site, and there's already a lot of traffic congestion. So, are there any board members, I'm not reiterating something that we need to hear by October 15th to help make more decisions? I also heard redoing the boundaries could cause more stress as well. But that's going to be done after.
Right. I think the question I have is as it relates to the EIA, because obviously whether Lincoln is considered to be a historical landmark is not going to be necessarily integrated within the EIA as part of one of the enumerated metrics that the board approved over a year ago, right? So we want to just make sure that we're clear in terms of, is this a direction to staff to provide context and information around some of these other details with capacity, savings, security, traffic flow, drop-off pickups, staggering of schedules, et cetera?
Increase in
Or
busing.
or are those components something that you're expecting to see integrated into a final EIA report?
I need help.
Because they
before-
can be done via staff communication and brought to a study session, but not necessarily integrated into the EIA to the extent it's not germane to addressing the various metrics in the report.
What is recommended, or what is the board's? I'd like to hear from, which way, what would you want to do?
I mean, so far as the EIA report, it feels pretty robust so far as what was asked, what's being put into place. And I understand that there's concerns that have arisen tonight. So I think for clarity's sake, if I'm not mistaken, what you're asking for is with the concerns that were brought up today, how do we address it via the EIA report, correct? Is that more of what you would want to, is that better to approach it that way, where concerns we have, we as a board will look at based on this EIA report? Or is there something from the concerns that were brought up, transportation, demographic, et cetera, where can we find that information within the EIA report? Can you recommend where we can look for that to get better, more in-depth? Is that?
Yes, I think that we're looking at two different things, because there's going to be some components of, from the discussion tonight that aren't necessarily, again, germane to what was addressed in the EIA per the metrics. Because remember, we followed the statutory procedures for the development of an EIA. Now it's no longer required because the district is not under state receivership anymore, but we're still following it because we're being loyal to the process. And at the time, with phase one, that's what we followed. We're in a different set of circumstances now, but nevertheless still following that path, right? So we have our enumerated metrics that the board approved, and those are integrated in here, and those serve as like the various sections in this document. So I guess my example of Lincoln, with it being a historical landmark, to the extent that that wouldn't apply or fit nicely within any of those metrics, there may not be a need to have Keith and Robert look at those details and plug them in. It can be included, I presume. Anything could be included, but not necessarily fit within the four corners of one of those metrics. But we can also separately have, instead of updating the EIA to include those details, there could separately be staff that communicates that information at a subsequent study session to help inform the board's decision at a later meeting. Does that make sense? So there's metrics and data and information that they studied that's gonna have to be in that report to align with the metrics that were board approved, but there's also gonna be other considerations, and it doesn't mean that the board can't consider other considerations, other information. And that can be received via study sessions, one-on-ones, what have you. So it's just a matter of if you want to integrate it into the report, or if you're okay with having only those items that apply to the metrics integrated, and then separately any other questions that are outside of the metrics addressed through, staff analysis, review, feedback at a subsequent meeting.
So I think then what we as a board are asking, and I think it would be to the superintendent and his cabinet, for example, being that we have this up here, transportation, right? The EA report tells us where the high impact, low impact, et cetera. And based on that, if there's specific school sites, whether it's through the recommendations or through the options given, if we want to look at what the cost is going to be for transportation, for example, Federal Terrace to Cooper, high transportation, right, high impact. So if that's a dollar figure that we want, that's not going to come from the EIA report or from the folks in that. Those are questions that we're going to ask the superintendent and the cabinet. So I think that's what you were kind of going for, and that's where you
Right.
don't
coming
address
from
that,
staff.
but you've given us information on how to ask staff for specific things regarding that.
Correct.
Am I?
And if we get those data points, we can request that they be integrated into the sections addressing impacts as it relates to transportation. If we want to call out a specific example, if there's one that is particularly of concern or of focus, we could certainly work with GFS to integrate the savings or the cost impacts of transportation from point A to point B. If we look at this scenario, we could do that. We just want to ensure that we have clear direction on which ones want to be, which ones the board wants to be specifically analyzed. Because as you can see, we have so many permutations.
Yeah.
If this, then this, and then that could spiral and open up 10 different other options, right? And that's why we're hesitant to talk about redrawing of boundaries and where kids would go, because we have to know foundationally which schools are being closed. Because then it's going to create a cascade of all these other impacts, and that would make this report into this.
Yeah.
And we would probably have to go back and do an addendum to add services to their contract. So, just being realistic. So,
Yeah.
I think for our purposes, to ensure that we are addressing the desires of the board and answering the questions that you all, because that's the whole point of these study sessions, so you all can make an informed, calculated, thoughtful decision. We just want to make sure that whatever data points you're seeking, we're getting those from staff, and to the extent that you do want to see those integrated into the EIA, that would be something where we would determine, okay, where would this fit, if anywhere?
So I think what I would recommend to you, President Fox, would be that any questions you have, and you can direct us, the other board members, that any questions we have specific about something in the EIA report that we want, dollar figures, amounts, then we'll direct it to the superintendent, so that at that next meeting that you would like to have as a group, we all see those, right? But that's gonna come from the district, not from here.
Well, and I think that's an excellent suggestion. It can be directed to the superintendent's office with any questions that you have. Just memorialize those in writing and send them off. And then maybe what we could do is use our discretion to see, okay, this seems to be a common theme among multiple board members, or a pretty major concern. Why don't we draw out an example or analyze that specific impact and plug it into a particular metric, and then we can work with Keith and Robert to do that. That way we're not keeping it so open-ended and loose. We're really looking at, okay, is this a common theme among the various board members or community concerns? Why don't we, that's the whole purpose of this very iterative process, where there's a draft EIA report, followed by study sessions and a final. It's to allow for this engagement, of course. And so that's where we want to ensure that we're incorporating it into the right provisions, but we're not going so far afield to the extent that they don't apply back to the metrics. But we're still answering your questions via, communications and data points presented by staff.
And on our end, that our questions are coming from the EIA report versus just more.
Correct.
And adding more and more layers to it. so.
Right, and we can distill that down, but once we see everything in writing, as to kind of, after you've been able to kind of mull this over and think about what it is what are your burning questions? What do you want to see? What do you feel like you're lacking? That's going to help inform the direction we go in terms of beefing up the EIA with additional content versus having staff present additional data points at a subsequent meeting. Does that
work.
sound fair?
Thank you, and Trustee Hodges wanted to say something. Thank you.
You two actually answered my questions. What I hear you saying is that we've got time to make decisions, and if we wanted to add to the analysis, that's an opportunity to do that. If we want to narrow it down or focus in on something particular, we need to give those questions
Correct.
to,
Correct.
yeah, and then that way you can see what we're actually, if there's
Correct.
a connection or some type of agreement of where we want to go to focus. And we have time to do that, right?
We
Is that
do.
what you're
Now,
saying?
for sequencing purposes, so the goal is to bring the final EIA report to the board for approval at the mid-November meeting before Thanksgiving. So we basically have a month and a half-ish. Okay, that's a little earlier. So we have a month and a week about to be able to get all that information, with the understanding as well that Keith and Robert will need time to prepare any updates before it's finally presented. So the sooner you can get them in, the better. And then what we can do is sift through those details and determine what's appropriate to include in the EIA for purposes of updates versus what can be, again, brought forward as part of a staff presentation at a subsequent study session. Awesome.
I know it's not on the EIA report, but just one scenario I just thought of in the last hour. Hogan Middle School used to be a high school back in the day. Is it possible to make Hogan a K-8 school? I mean, just, because if we're thinking about we're thinking about closing Pennycook, thinking about rather distributing everyone, it keeps everyone still in the same neighborhood, but just, I know it's just such a strange and hard demographic, but.
So the current enrollment at Hogan is 835 middle schoolers. I don't know the overall capacity offhand, but it is a robust middle school.
Right.
I'm trying to imagine it with TKers. And it's
Right.
just, it feels like a daunting combination, given the size of the middle school itself, right? If it was a small middle school, I could see that, because it is, a large campus, but it's a pretty robust offering already, with a lot of specialized SDC classes and things like that. That is a hefty ask for a site administrator to manage that range with so many kids.
Based on timelines for the Hello. So I think based on timelines for the EIA reports, we can't throw in another score now. So I think right now we shouldn't focus on, hey, what about this idea? Because I think that's what kind of happened on the last go-round. So, but it's definitely, something to think about later, but just not You know, and the only reason I'm even commenting on it is because our goal is not to give them more work or add another layer to it, right? Here's what we told them, here's the school sites, this is what they've come back with.
But I appreciate you looking outside the box and thinking of other scenarios. So down the road, we don't know. Just like when we were looking at John Finney, I'm like, what about district office? I mean, it was something new that so things are coming up that at least we're all brainstorming ideas because it's a very difficult situation. So I think however way we can all try to figure this out. Yes?
Just to clarify, the cost for this lease here is $43,000 a year.
So it's 3,000 a
Yeah,
month.
just, my first assumption was.
3,000 something a month. All right, thank you. But still, I think we're supposed to be owning it. Did you have something?
I just had a thought that, we will do everything we can to pull together as much information as possible that might make this decision supportive, but I don't think we're going to analyze our way to an easier decision. Right. We're going to this is going to be a hard decision no matter what, and no scenario and no piece of information is going to make that decision seem easier, and no research and information is going to make it magically easy. Magically, once the decision is made, now it's just going to be super easy to do it. Like, all of this is hard from start to finish, and we just did it in a shorter time frame, and some of it was crunchy, getting it done, and not perfect. So I am happy that we're doing it in a longer time frame, but, data will help somewhat, but it's not going to make the decision for us.
So from what I'm hearing, board members, make sure you get all scenario questions to Superintendent Aurelio as soon as possible, so that can be compiled and get to us by the October 15th next study session meeting. Then from that information, hopefully we'll narrow things down further to get the final EIA report by November 5th, correct? And then from there, we'll be making the final decision by December 17th. So there's our timelines for the information and how to get and disseminate the information. Anything else from anyone? Trustee Flores?
I just kind of want to make a quick comment in regards to what we're doing here, and I've been talking to folks recently about this, and what I would like the community to know is that I think our ultimate goal here is to build a system that's going to outlast us all, that's going to better the district, right? We're going to put a system that once we're all gone off the board, once the superintendent retires from the district, that system is going to outlive us. So I want to ask the community to understand that it's going to be difficult, it's going to be unpopular, but we're all here for the greater good of our district. So I just want to thank you all for being in this with me.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And thank you for all the staff and everyone's input. I think we're down to announcement of upcoming meetings. Next, tomorrow is our 2x2 at 4:30 in the Central Chamber of City Hall with our first one with our student trustees. And then next Wednesday is a regular scheduled board meeting, October 1st, Wednesday. And then, is it the 17th, the next regular scheduled meeting? I think, October 17th, I can look at my phone. 17th? 15th, Wednesday the 15th. And then we know we have, that's also the day of our, it's a combined study session and regular meeting. So I think am I missing any upcoming meetings?
For the board, if you're interested, October 6th, which is a Monday, from 5 to 7:45, that is the Vallejo City Council Planning Committee, and they're discussing Rolling Wood. So, from 5 to 7:45. So it would be good if any of you are available to attend the planning commission meeting and maybe make public comment, if that's a possibility there, because this is one of those, we talk about the being an escrow for years and not getting the $6 million. This directly impacts that. Monday the 6th.
Can we have Rhonda, please, or Rochelle, please send an email reminder to the board regarding that time and date? Thank you. Anything else for upcoming or go to the order before we adjourn? Okay, then thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow for some of you at the 2x2. We are adjourned at 7:41. Good night, everyone.